Hey guys, so I thought I'd make a review of Dehancer. They reached out and said they'd give me a trial subscription to their service if I made a review, but they said it could be honest and they have no say over what I say. So I thought I'd look into it. For my narrative filmmaking and my documentary filmmaking, I try to soften the image sometimes with mist filters or diffusion filters. But there's some issues with those sometimes. You can get ghosting or it can overly wash out your image. So there's some things in Dehancer that might replace those filters. And there's a bunch of other cool stuff in Dehancer. So I thought, well, let's look at it. So why don't we hop into Premiere and take a look at it together and see if it might replace some of my filters. Let's go. So what we have here is a shot from my feature film, Man-Made Lake, that we're premiering at the Spark of Madness Film Festival in May of 2026 here in Pocatello, Idaho. It's a new film festival, so if you're in the area or if you're wherever, you should come to it because it's going to be sweet. So I thought this would be a good shot to initially kind of go through Dehancer. So you just grab the Dehancer effect here, drag it onto your clip, and then you're off and running. And you just come in here. Usually I just hop in the film tab here first in the effects panel. And I really like these Kodak ones. They seem to be some of the most popular. So I think this one looks really good with this shot, the Kodak Vision 3 50D. But what I really like about Dehancer is that you don't have to use the film emulation if it looks out of place for what you're going for, but you can still use the other features. So you just click enable here to disable it, and then you come down here and you look for things like film grain, and if the film grain is a little too much for you, then you can disable that. But if you really just want to add like a little halation and a little bloom, you can just come down here and just turn those things on. And I think that's super useful because that's what I'm going to do if I just want to replace my mist filters or my diffusion filters. If I just want a little bloom in the highlights, or if I just want to soften the highlights on the skin a little bit, you can just play with these things and not have to deal with the film emulation stuff. I'll show you the halation here first. If you look at the highlights, you just click enable here, and it's really subtle, but you can make it more apparent by selecting like the lower you go, right, the 8mm Super 8 stock will make it more apparent, and the 65 less apparent. So all it really does with the halation, I like this, the Super 35 here. It's a nice middle ground, but it just kind of warms up the highlights. You don't see a lot of blooming because they separated out the bloom effect into its own thing. So I like this amount of halation, and then we can come in and play with the bloom. Let's enable that. And boom, 35mm, you got some significant bloom already. That looks like maybe 1/8 black pro mist. I'll do some before and afters here in a second for you. But that looks great to me. And then you can come in here if you want it more apparent. You go down to the Super 8 again. Boom, more bloom. And if you want it less apparent, you go to the 65, and it's really subtle. So I think this is really useful if you want a little bit of bloom, but you don't want to worry about ghosting and aliasing and or artifacts with dealing with filters. So I'll show you some before and afters here to make my point. So this is the Black Pro Mist 1/8 filter. This is the Black Pro Mist 1/4, right here. And this is no filter. So I'll play this through, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about with how, you can see how it's kind of washed out here, right? You get a loss of contrast, which is what some people go for with those filters, right? But you can see significant ghosting there from the light bulb. And now this is the 1/4 Black Pro Mist. Again, it's loss of contrast, loss of saturation, and even more ghosting and lens flare. So if you're going for that, that's fine, but it is baked in. And now you have no filter here, and you have more contrast. It's less washed out, and you have very little artifacts here, very little ghosting. There's a little bit there from the lens elements, but nothing compared to the other two. Now what I can do is I can add my Dehancer here to my no filter clip, and I can come in here and I can turn off the film stock and turn off film grain, and then just come down to halation and enable that bad boy, and come down to bloom and enable that bad boy. And then, I mean, I'm pleased with this look, and I don't get the artifacts. So here's what it looked like with the 1/4, right? You get that flaring and that loss of contrast. But here is what it looks like without it. I mean, it looks good to me. It looks softened up, and I don't get the artifacts. So I prefer this image. So something else I wanted to talk about. There's an online version if you don't want to use a plugin for Premiere or DaVinci or After Effects. But there's also an iOS version where you can edit photos. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to do something similar here where I just drag Dehancer onto some stills of mine at j.alexander.evans on Instagram. But here's a wind turbine, and this picture actually I think looks really cool with a film emulation. For still photography, for some reason I'm more open to emulating film with still photography than I am with doing it on digital movies. I don't know why that is. I'll have to do some soul searching, but this looks good to me. And so I can come through here and play with some different, I like the 50D. Yeah, that looks really cool. So there's the after, here's the before. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, this looks great with film emulation. I might save this. And then, so yeah, it's just cool that you can do this on the iOS. Here's another one here. Another picture of mine. Let's do my favorite, 50D. And let's try another one. Let's try the 250D. Yeah, and Kodak Gold. Some of these look really cool. And here's another picture of Yellowstone Falls, one of my favorite waterfalls. If you haven't been to Yellowstone, what are you doing with your life? But let's see here. Take that off and then add some. There it goes. Add Dehancer. I don't know why it wasn't adding that first time, but these look great. I don't know what it is about still photography and film emulation, but I really like these. So that's something cool you can do with the iOS app. And I guess you can do it apparently in Premiere too, if you want to, for some reason, edit photos in Premiere if you're a crazy person. So what are my overall conclusions? I think for stills, it's actually pretty sweet. For film, I probably wouldn't use like for movies, I probably wouldn't use the film emulation stuff and the film grain very often, unless I'm going for something nostalgic, like a flashback to the 70s or something. But I will use the halation and the blooming features probably a lot, and I think they will replace my diffusion filters. I don't think I really need those anymore. I just bought some new ones, and I think I'm going to return them. So let me know in the comments if you think I'm crazy. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.